All right, let's dive into an absolutely wild piece of aquatic drama we've been tracking. Today's explainer focuses on Ang's Notes on Fishkeeping, Part 299, published back in July 2026. We are looking at a serious, high-stakes saga of survival, strategy, and just the intense realities of trying to breed polar parrot cichlids.
Okay, let's dive into this. Right off the bat, Ang titles this entry a third attempt. And, that phrase alone tells you so much, right? It screams trial, error, and an immense amount of patience. Fish keeping is so incredibly unpredictable, and this log perfectly highlights the sheer resilience you need to foster new life in a glass box.
So, Act 1, the tragedy and the widower, setting the stage with our lone alpha male. To really grasp the gravity of this third attempt, we kind of have to look back at where this tank started. The fact that there is only one surviving juvenile fish is a stark, honestly heartbreaking reminder of Ang's very first attempt at a spawn, which ended in total tragedy. The original female actually didn't survive once the spawn started. It's a harsh reality of the hobby for sure, leaving the tank totally in the hands of the surviving male.
Now, many moons have passed since that first tragic spawn, and our surviving male hasn't just been, treading water. He has practically been hitting the gym. He's bulked up, grown significantly larger, and morphed into a true dominant alpha male. His instincts are kicking into overdrive, and he is officially back on the dating market, actively and aggressively searching for a new female to start a fresh spawn.
Let's map out the timeline and see how this builds, because it really shows how the stakes have escalated. We've got the first attempt, that tragic spawn we just talked about, then the second attempt, which, spoiler alert, ended in a fatal mistake, and that brings us to the third attempt, the brand new strategy we're unpacking today. It's a perfect look at how Ang is actively learning from past disasters.
Which brings us to Act 2, a fatal mistake, exploring the conflict and the real danger of misidentification.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core issue. Anyone who keeps cichlids knows introducing a new fish is never just a casual plop them in the water kind of deal. It is a high-stress, literal life-or-death scenario that hinges almost entirely on getting the gender right. In that second attempt, the physical imbalance was just way too extreme. On one side, you have the established alpha, huge, bulky, fiercely defending his turf, and on the other, the newly introduced fish, which was significantly smaller.
So what exactly went wrong? Well, the goal was obviously to introduce a female. But sexing cichlids is notoriously difficult, and unfortunately the fish Ang added turned out to be another male. The fallout was immediate. That smaller, newly introduced male survived for less than a day. He fell right victim to the alpha's intense territorial aggression. Just a total disaster.
All right, Act 3, a calculated risk. Introducing the two-female strategy.
So the crucial point is that Ang doesn't just throw in the towel. Instead of repeating the exact same mistake and just crossing their fingers, Ang engineers a totally new approach. The logic here is actually brilliant. Step 1, introduce 2 female fish instead of 1. Mathematically, it just doubles the odds of actually getting a female. But step 2 is the real genius move. Ang figures, hey, if I get the gender wrong again, having 2 fish in there will act as a buffer. It divides the alpha male's attention, keeping him occupied and diffusing that lethal aggression. It's literally a built-in distraction strategy to save lives if the idea is wrong.
And we get a real-time update from the log on this. Ang writes with this great sense of cautious optimism, saying, so far, my initial observation indicates that the 2 new fish I've introduced are very likely females, judging from their initial interaction. So right out of the gate, it looks like this calculated risk might actually be paying off.
Moving on to anticipating the next steps, planning for success, and dealing with the third wheel.
Now, as you know, you can't just drop fish in a tank and walk away. The protocol from here on out is super strict. First up, careful observation. Ang has to sit back and watch these interactions like a hawk. If they are both females, nature does its thing, and one of them will likely bond with the alpha male to initiate a pairing. But here is the kicker. The second that pairing happens, Ang has to intervene immediately and scoop the remaining female out into a different tank. Because while 2 is company, in a cichlid breeding tank, 3 is a death sentence. That leftover female becomes a third wheel and would be in massive danger once the happy couple starts fiercely defending their spawn.
It's just such a delicate, fascinating balancing act, right? We've seen the heartbreak of the first try, the fatal miscalculation of the second, and now we're watching a highly strategic, calculated gamble unfold. The resilience of both the fish and the keeper here is just off the charts. But it leaves us with the million-dollar question. Will the third time actually be the charm for this lone, bulky alpha? I guess we're all going to be waiting on the edge of our seats for part 300 of Ang's journal to find out.
Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, and keep observing the world around you.